So we begin the fifth book of the Torah. Commentary says if you look at the 5 books, in addition to the milliards of messages that there are in every chapter and every verse and every word and every letter, there's an overriding message of the 5 books. There's a journey. Bereshis, Genesis. Shemos, we call it Exodus, but Shemos really means names. It's kind of strange to call a book names when it really talks about Exodus, but that's the real name of the book. Vayikra, we call it Leviticus. Vayikra means really, he called. That's another strange name for a book. Bamidbar means, we call it Numbers, but it really means in the desert. That's the name of a book. And finally, Devarim, we call it Deuteronomy. Devarim means words, messages. Moses' final words to the people. Hasidic masters tell us this is a map of the story of our lives. Bereshis, in the beginning. We show up, we pop out of our mother's womb, we look around, we see a world. Ich bin da, I'm here. We recognize ourselves as a real reality. We're happy to be here. It's an exciting, curious place. Every child experiences that Bereshis period of Genesis. I'm curious, I'm interested, I'm enjoying, I'm watching. Childhood. With all of its pitfalls, there's still a lot of joy in childhood. But then we come to Shemos. We start to think that our mission in life, to make a name for myself. Hence, we're in book 2, names. Hey, there's 7 billion people on the planet. What about me? Who's going to remember me? How important that me? And then we spend that period. I don't know, maybe that begins in adolescence, young adulthood, and that can go on for a decade, maybe more. Again, everybody at the level of maturity and guidance or lack thereof that they might experience. Shemos. We spend much of that energetic years. Shemos, I'm going to make a name. I'm going to go down in history. I'm going to be something and someone. I'm going to be a macher, a knacker, and a dreyer. But then at some point we realize that it's not really going to happen. You know, most people are not remembered by history. 1% of 1% of 1% is remembered by history. So the person looks into the mirror, they're now 30, maybe 40, and they say, hey, this names business is not going to pan out. I better find a reason for existence, notwithstanding the fact that I'm not that important in the scheme of things. How do I deal with that? Then we get to the book of Vayikra. We hear a calling. The calling might be, I'm going to become very successful. I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to volunteer. I'm going to have a mission to help people. I'm going to become very spiritual. I'll become very religious. I'll become connected. I'll go on a diet. I don't know. But a calling. And at this point, maybe we're in our 30s and 40s, we are starting to feel like, aha! I have a calling. I might even make a name for myself, I think, maybe, if I'm really, really successful in my calling. But even if not, I have a calling. I'm something and I'm someone. Thank you very much. This is a little bit of a better attitude, but deep down, it's really the same nonsense of name-seeking, of thinking that at the end of the day, my purpose is just a little me. And that's why at some point, like any lie, it's short-lived, and at some point as we really mature, maybe we're turning the corner into 50s. Again, these dates are random depending on the person's maturity and spirituality. Suddenly we find ourselves Bamidbar, we're in the desert. We look back, we spent so many years with our calling, and maybe we had a measure of success, maybe we did not, maybe we had some disappointments. Life's a mixed bag. But you look back and we say, I'm in the desert. I'm just lost. This is maybe the midlife crisis, right? Bamidbar. We all go through this, some more than others. Where do we go from here? And the clock's ticking. I'm rounding third base. I'm 50, I'm 55, I'm 60, you know what I mean? Hello, and that's the whole story. I had a calling, and suddenly I found out that maybe I'm not going to be the most famous person ever, or the most impactful person ever, or I'm not going to discover the cure of cancer. I'm just another Joe. And depression can set in. Even with successes in various ways in life, maybe spiritually or familially or financially or even religiously. But the calling didn't quite do it for us. And we're in the wilderness. We're lost, we're confused, we're second-guessing perhaps the paths that we took. I mean, this desert plays itself out in various ways. The Chassidic masters keep it general. Of course, we can each apply it to ourselves. That's the beauty of true wisdom, of Torah wisdom. It's applicable to everybody. You just have to fill in the blanks. So where does that leave me? I'm in the desert. Comes book 5, Deuteronomy, Devarim, words. You want to know what the mission of life is? To carry the word. These are the words. That's how the book begins. There's a word. There's a word of truth. It comes from you-know-who, the big boss, the creator of life, which is really life itself, the only existence of life. And he gave us his word. It's called the Torah. And he said, Kindalach, I want you to pass it on from one generation to the next. I may be small. I may be insignificant. I may or may not be remembered by history. I may or may not be remembered in 50 years from now. But you know what? I am carrying the word, the eternal world of the eternal one. As stated in Tanya, the Alter Rabbi says that when you do a mitzvah, it's a unity with God, and I'm quoting, the unity with God that happens by a mitzvah. I light a little Shabbos licht, I put on tefillin, I kiss a mezuzah, I eat kosher, I make a bracha on lunch, I say Shema in the morning, what have you, I make kiddush, etc., etc. It's a unity with God that's eternal, because God doesn't have a clock. In the space of spirituality, everything you do, if it's real, it's eternal. Sins are temporary. Mitzvahs are forever. You're connecting to the word, and that word is eternal. I may be little, but I'm connecting to a word that's gigantic. Here's, I think, a good metaphor. You know, think of a forest fire. It's a bad thing, but think of it in terms of a positive. Let's say we wanted to have a forest fire. Sometimes there's a need. They burn down the forest to rejuvenate. Good or bad or indifferent. It's a gigantic power of nature that goes on and on and on. And I'm just one little twig among thousands, perhaps millions, I don't know. Countless. I'm one little twig, I'm meaningless. But if my twig is in the right place at the right time, I'm carrying that flame into the future. That's how we should view ourselves. We're little twigs. If I live my life just taking care of me, if my life is just about me, how foolish, how temporary, how stupid. A wise man said the cemetery is filled with people who thought the world will never forget them. We are here to be a little twig, but a twig that in essence has a flame that's eternal, which is our soul, and therefore that twig is able to carry the eternal flame of Hashem. Deuteronomy, I'm able to carry the word. The word is eternal. The word is forever. It's a unity that never goes away, and I'm carrying that flame. That's a reason to live. That's a mission. That's a purpose. And there's a great anecdote that brings it home. That a young man comes home to his village after he went off to study for a number of years, and he had studied music. People in the village never heard of music, if you can envision such a thing. It was a simple village, away from everything, verrückt, mittendrin. And he came home and he studied music, and the people were so curious and they wanted to learn about it. So he made a public meeting. He invited whoever wants to come and see the beauty of the world of music that he learned, maybe in Juilliard or what have you. And everyone gathers around town hall, and he pulls out a flute. He puts it to his lips and he makes a few toots. And then he makes another few toots, and back and forth, and he's tooting. But there's no apparent pattern in the tooting. It's just like happening here and there. And he keeps on doing this, and the people, first they're a little impressed with the sound, but then they look at each other. Is that it? Is this the big chacham? Is this what they taught you in the big city? To make a couple of toots? You're not doing nothing. It doesn't even sound nice. And when they're amply confused, he says, my dear shtetl buddies, you're right. When I stand here alone, it sounds almost ridiculous, but I'm not alone. I'm one musician among hundreds of musicians. We have an orchestra. We play in harmony, and everyone does their instrument to perfection, with the rhythm and with harmoniously. And when we play together, my little toot adds a beauty, a beauty to the whole orchestra. How great an analogy is that? I'm a little twig. I'm just one person. But within me, I have a flame of Hashem. And that flame is attracted to the flame of the forest fire, of the word of Hashem that came from Sinai and will go till Mashiach and beyond. And I have a little tiny flame. I have a little tiny voice. I have a little tiny piece of music that I play. I have a small roll. I have a little toot. But when I play my toot, when I light my Shabbos licht and my film and my Shema Yisrael and my mitzvahs and my positivity and joy in helping another or in being close to Hashem, my little toot, are you kidding? It beautifies the whole orchestra. The conductor would notice if it was missing. A good conductor doesn't miss a beat. I'm contributing to the whole picture. And hence I have the journey of life mapped out. I'm born with Bereshis Genesis. I just show up at the beginning. Shemos names, I look to make a name for myself. Vayikra, I finally start hearing a calling. Bamidbar, I end up in the desert, in the wilderness, because that calling didn't seem to satisfy me. And I'm still trying to look for the answers to life's real mysteries. And finally, Devarim, there are words. There's a word of Hashem to carry on. Just like my neshama is part of the word of Hashem, my flame, my inner flame, and I get to carry that word. Let's get busy. Let's not waste time looking at a mirror and figuring out where I'm going to be and when I'm going to be and who's going to know that I was. Instead, carry that word that's forever and ever. And in that way, your eternity of your neshama connects to the eternity of the flame of Hashem.